I built two SaaS companies from scratch. The first one, Freshline, I scaled to over $3 million in revenue. My second one, Supademo, I took from zero to over $1 million in ARR in just 16 months, and today we're now scaling it towards 8 figures in ARR. And after spending over a decade building software companies, I now know exactly what I'd do differently if I had to start all over again. Because if I just had the right guidance or mentorship a little bit earlier in my journey, I would have gotten here so much faster and avoided so many of the mistakes that I actually made. So in this video, I'm gonna give you the step-by-step playbook and the tips and tricks on what I'd do if I started a SaaS company today in 2026 and wanted to take it from zero to $1 million a year as fast as possible. This is exactly what I wish I had back then, so let's get right into it. The first thing that I would do is spend serious time choosing the right market and the right problem space and not over fixating on finding the perfect idea. Because in my experience, the right market always trumps the founder. For example, if you're a good founder in a bad market, you can work yourself to the bone and still barely survive. But if you're a decent founder in a great emerging market, just by being in the game long enough, you're gonna increase your surface area for getting lucky and catching a wave. And eventually, you're gonna. To put this into perspective, I spent over 5 years building my first company, Coastline Market, which was a B2B marketplace for seafood. And we grew it to over $3 million in revenue. But the market fought us at every turn because buyers weren't actively searching for a solution, and we had to educate them from scratch just to convince them that they had a problem that was worth solving. So when it came time to building something new, when I transitioned from that company, picking the right market was the first thing that I focused on. And by the way, I'd evaluate the efficacy of a market by distilling it to 3 simple factors. First, I want to find a market with tailwinds, meaning there's already momentum pulling it forward rather than me having to push it along myself. For my new company, Supademo, that meant building at the intersection of product-led growth and AI-enabled tooling, 2 areas that were already growing fast and only trending upwards. Second, I want to find buyers who are already searching for a solution to a problem that they're facing and one that I'm hoping to solve. Because there's a massive difference in addressability, the cost, and distribution between a market where people are already searching for solutions to a problem than one where you have to educate people one by one. In B2B SaaS, a few percentage points of improvement on your conversion rate or your sales cycle can make or break a deal, so companies are always looking for that edge. But even in the right market with the right set of buyers, I'd also personally want to make sure I have empathy and understanding in solving the problem by having experienced it myself. For example, at my last company, Freshline, we were a sales-led organization and everything depended on how many demos we could actually book and conduct. So I was using Loom and video-based demos and tutorials to try to show prospects what our product actually did and why it mattered. But they just didn't want to sit through a 30-minute video, they were impatient, and the content that I was sending them was super passive. But what I did notice is when I actually got someone on a live, interactive, back and forth screen sharing session, that's when they got it. So the question for me became, how do I replicate that interactive, engaging, back and forth learning by doing experience without having to be there for every single call? And that's where the idea for Supademo came from. And the reason for starting from your own lived experience and pain points and why that matters so much is there's no guesswork. You don't have to guess whether the problem itself is real. You've actually lived it. And when you're talking to early adopters, champions, and customers, you're actually speaking their language from day one because you were one of them. Now, once I have the problem identified and I believe in it, the next thing I do is validate it as quickly as possible before writing any code. And I don't mean posting on a Twitter or Reddit thread and just seeing at a surface layer on whether they like the idea. I mean, getting on calls with potential buyers, asking them specific data about how they deal with the problem today, what actual workarounds they've used, and the real costs, whether it's time, money, or effort that they've put in to resolve it. Because there's a huge difference between somebody online saying your idea sounds cool to someone actually pulling out their credit cards or spending real time testing out your solution. And the only way to figure out which side they're on is through real conversations and real action. For me, that meant over 100 different conversations and getting folks to use prototypes of ours in real world settings and getting letters of intent that actually solidified what they'd pay once we launched. Then, once I've confirmed people actually want this, I'd build an MVP as lean and as fast as humanly possible. So for the first 8 months of Supademo, it was just me and my co-founder. 2 people, no funding, no office, fully remote, shipping as quickly as possible. And that constraint was actually an advantage because it forced us to narrow our focus and build only what matters. We shipped over 200 features in the first 24 months, and I personally probably made over 800 code commits. And the faster we shipped, the faster we grew because it was a snowball effect. Every feature that we put in front of another was a chance for users to go from free to paid or to tell someone else about our product. And so the one thing I'd be very intentional about from day one is building for virality and engineering product-led levers into your experience. At my first company, Freshline, we were sales-led. Every customer had to be pitched one by one and sold individually by a human. With Supademo, I wanted to do the exact opposite. A product that people could find, they could try, experience, and find value in before eventually buying. And doing this in a way where they didn't even need to talk to anyone. And that shift in mindset changes everything how you think about how you build. Because when you're product-led, you can't rely on the salesperson explaining away confusing parts of your product. Every piece of your onboarding, your messaging, your upgrade flow, your UX has to be clear enough and concise that someone can figure it out on their own. And for us, that forced us to build a better product experience from the ground up. But I learned that it doesn't matter how good your product is if people can't find it or they don't hear about it. So I had to learn that building and distribution are equally important from the very beginning, which leads directly into how I got my first customers. So this is a phase where I do things that absolutely do not scale on purpose. And I know that sounds counterintuitive when the whole goal is to build a scalable business. But the unscalable stuff is really the requisite foundation that's needed to get to scalability in the first place. At Supademo, it was all about shouting from the rooftops. I was posting on indie hackers, on Twitter, on Reddit, jumping into as many communities as I can and talking to potential users day in and day out. None of that was actually efficient, but it got us our first couple thousand signups. And on Reddit specifically, we got thousands of signups without ever even pitching the product itself. I would show up in threads where people were talking about product demo advice or onboarding pitfalls and use my own product itself to answer workflows or create demos for folks. I'd essentially lead with value, ask for nothing in return, and ultimately let people assess Supademo in a super organic way. That organic approach worked way better than anything that felt like an ad. Because people on Reddit can smell a pitch from a mile away. The only thing that actually works is adding value to the conversation. Then I layered on what I call a done-for-you approach. When a company would launch a new feature, I'd proactively create a product demo for them using Supademo. Then I'd reach out and say something like, hey, congrats on the launch. I made this super quick interactive demo for you. Feel free to use it or check it out or plug it into your product update blog. And again, that worked because I was leading with value instead of asking for something. I was doing so many of these myself because founder-led outreach almost always converts better than delegating to someone else. Basically, I would do whatever work necessary to make it a no-brainer yes for potential customers. And by the way, if you're building a SaaS right now and you want an easy way to create interactive product demos that sell your product for you, you can try Supademo for free. There's a link at the top of the description. Now, back to the video. The other thing I'd be obsessive about during this phase is one-on-one customer engagement. During this time, I try to answer every single support ticket myself and handle all demo requests personally. Because at this stage, it doesn't matter how talented someone you hire is. They can't figure out the fundamentals of your business like you can. You can only delegate what you've done yourself and understand deeply. So the painful process of figuring out what messaging resonates, what features people actually care about, and what actually makes someone convert, that has to come from the founder. And in the end, there's a natural snowball snowball effect that happens when you put in all this manual work. The unscalable stuff isn't just a temporary thing to get you by. It's actually building the foundation for your company. Every conversation, every organic post, and every proactive demo that you create for someone else is compounding into brand awareness, user feedback, virality, and eventually organic traffic. That's when the snowball starts to roll on its own, pick up pace, and that's when you transition into scalable distribution channels. So at some point, you gotta stop doing everything on your own, and you gotta start building channels that bring in customers. The way I'd approach this is by testing one new acquisition channel every single month. You let it run, then you decide whether to stop it, to continue it, or to scale it further. At Supademo, this stop, continue, or scale approach kept us from wasting time on stuff that wasn't working, and it also helped us double down on what actually was. For context, our transition from $100,000 to $500K in ARR was almost entirely founder-led, but everything that came after that, 500 to 700 to $1 million, we found 3 scalable channels with this exact process. And the channel I'd prioritize above anything else is product-led SEO. The idea is simple. For example, take features that already exist inside of your product itself and spin them out into standalone free tools on their own SEO-optimized landing pages. You're giving people something genuinely useful completely for free. A percentage of those users will realize they need your core product. For example, at Supademo, we had a screenshot editor that was beautifully designed and built into our product as a standard feature. But instead of keeping it gated and locked behind our product experience, we made it completely free to use without any login. After embedding that feature directly within a highly curated SEO-optimized page, that page now drives over 12,000 visitors per week, and it's probably our top performing page. And the math behind this makes it worth it, even if most of those visitors are unqualified or won't convert. Yeah, 90% of the people who use those free tools will never become paying customers, but that's fine, because the remaining 5, 10, 15% of people who benefit from your core product are discovering you now organically. And they convert better because you've already proven value. You've given them something without asking for anything in return. And on top of that, the SEO benefits and the domain authority from those high traffic pages lift everything else on the website together. This approach is what took us to our first few $100,000 in ARR, and we did it without spending a dime on Google Ads to reach our first 500K. The next thing I'd layer in is bottom of funnel comparison pages and how-to content. Comparison pages target long tail keywords around competitor traffic, so when someone's searching for alternatives, they find your page instead. So the name of the game here is to create alternative pages to any product, any competitor under the sun, and try to latch on to existing traffic that already exists for that product. Ours converts at a higher than 20% visitor to sign up rate, which is massive for organic content. I'd also start engineering small ways for your existing users to bring in new ones. Small tweaks compound fast once you have tens of thousands of users. So one example on our side was we changed our premium CTA from create a demo to try Supademo. And that wording change improved click-through rates at a pretty dramatic fashion. Over time, our viral flywheel and referrals became our third biggest source for signups. And on the pricing side, I charge more than I think I should earlier than I want to. A lot of early stage founders underprice because they're scared that raising prices is gonna kill growth. We did the exact same thing, but it had the opposite effect, because when we increased our pricing by 3, by 4, by 5x, our churn went down, because higher prices often force you to deliver more value. You start obsessing over quality, rebuilding your onboarding, and making every single interaction count. You also signal that you have a quality product, and while customers who pay more expect more, they also stick around when you actually deliver. Now, this isn't something that's talked about as much when people frame the $0 to $1 million journey. Getting to $1 million in ARR isn't just about acquiring customers, it's about keeping them. Because the revenue graph from 0 to $1 million is not a smooth line. It's full of plateaus where you're going to flatline. And a lot of those plateaus aren't necessarily caused by slow growth. They're caused by churn eating away at your revenue. And we cut down our churn to below 5% as a self-serve PLG product, and that single metric is the biggest reason why we were able to cross 7 figures as quickly as we did. And the way I'd approach retention is by treating customer support as a growth lever and not as a cost center. At Supademo, world-class support is one of the ways we compete with larger, better-funded incumbents and competitors. At a high level, big companies just can't move at the same pace or give the same level level of support and personal attention that a small team can. And a good support experience can spread virality and word of mouth, which is the best growth channel you can't buy. So I'd invest there heavily and often, as frequently as you can, even when it feels like it doesn't scale. And the last piece is something that happened for us naturally after we've been in the market long enough. Around the 750 to $1 million in ARR mark, we started getting inbound from large companies and enterprises that frankly wouldn't have given us the time of day a year earlier. Enterprise momentum kicked in and our brand perception shifted. And that didn't come from any specific tactic itself. It came from accumulating enough time in market, from a good product, consistent shipping, and real customers vouching for us. And that's something that you can't hack. So if I'm thinking about building again from $0 to $1 million in ARR, I'm thinking about retention from day one. Not just how to get customers, but how to make losing them impossible. Because SaaS that retains well will compound on itself, and every new customer adds to a growing base instead of just one replacing another one that is just left. And that compounding effect is actually what gets you to $1 million in ARR and helps you scale further. So if you're building a SaaS right now and you want to start creating interactive product demos that help you close more deals and onboard customers faster, you can start using Supademo completely for free by clicking the link in the description below. It takes just a few minutes to set up and there's no credit card required. And if you want to learn how to make an exceptional world-class SaaS product demo with AI, you can check out this video next.